Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll be talking about the top things your MMP should be doing for you in 2025. And we know performance marketing is more complex than ever. Privacy changes have disrupted attribution, cost analysis is messy and incomplete, and supercharging your budget is still a constant battle. But while the challenges are real, so are the solutions. So today we're going to discuss the biggest obstacles performance marketers face, and more importantly, how the right MMP can help you solve them. Since this is on demand, you can feel free to pause, get a drink, rewind, revisit, share with any relevant teammates or peers. We're so happy you're here. So, for some introductions, I'm Amanda Vandiver. I lead product marketing at Branch and first started back in 2017. I'm excited to be joined by my partners from the performance product. Mark, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Really stoked to be here and have a nice in-depth conversation about some really important ad tech topics. My name is Mark Hansen. I'm a senior product manager at Branch. I've been at Branch for 3 years. Prior to Branch, I was at Google for about 9 years. I worked on Google Marketing Platform across display and mobile. So I've been in ad tech for a long time and excited to geek out today. So over to you, Justin.
Awesome.
How's it going, everyone? Justin First is here, Senior Product Manager at Branch. I came to Branch 5 years ago now with a background in mobile app development. So you could say I'm quite enthusiastic about growing digital platforms and very much looking forward to the conversation today.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for being here. And I'm really excited because Mark and Justin are both so plugged into the ad industry and they're constantly thinking 5 steps ahead, and I get to learn from them all the time. So today we get to share that with you. So to kick us off, there's broad consolidation in the paid media ecosystem, and marketers are spending on the top ad networks, but often struggling to prove out performance when expanding to other paid channels. So what's going on here, Mark? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we're seeing broad consolidation of ad channels. I mean, whether that's just via acquisition or mergers or maybe smaller players, leaving the industry, whatever the reason, we're seeing broad consolidation. And one big trend for that consolidation for marketers is that they tend to go to the players that offer the most data. So you're seeing really kind of more of a winner take all type of effect of marketers moving to the largest ad network players. We know who those are. And one thing that I've noticed is that it really creates kind of a performance inefficiency or a lack of opportunity because it doesn't just mean that these big players are where you can get all of the best marketing opportunity. It just kind of is where you can maybe prove out that opportunity the best. And that's where, an MMP is so critical, is to really be able to see the true performance of your media. So, I mean, I think that there's really an opportunity outside of some of these largest players that marketers should be considering. And so, uh, if we think about which ad networks might be underutilized right now, Justin, what would you say are maybe some examples of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first channel that kind of comes to mind is CTV. I find that as we see the barrier to entry to buy reach on living room devices has become cheaper than it's ever been, especially compared historically to linear buying. Uh, I recently saw some DSPs offering a reach of 120 million households for as low as $50. So your cost per reach is extremely effective and efficient. I think this low barrier to cost is one of the main driving reasons we see media planning budgets continuously expand their portions for CTV. And the growth that we see in CTV ads monetization today, and we will see in the upcoming years. For reference, in 2023, CTV hit somewhere around 27 billion in ads monetization, and I believe it's projected to hit closer to 42 and up in the next 4 years.
I mean, that sounds so promising, but honestly, in like the marketers that I talk to, the subject doesn't come up that much. And so I can't help but wonder, like, if it is such good value, why isn't this a higher priority for marketers to get into?
Yeah, I think it's still early, and this potentially could be one of those chicken or the egg situations, where like historically CTV has always been a strong brand and awareness objective and play. Because historically you'd always have these report outs on your TV campaigns but they're delayed, they're in batch, and they're not very heavily utilized for real-time optimization. I think the industry is changing though. And I foresee the decline in brand and awareness play with further investment in performance.
Yeah, what comes to my mind there is like the kind of the aphorism that what truly all marketing should be performance marketing when you think about it, because performance is being able to tie an outcome to, your marketing activity. And we only really had to deal with non-performance media because we couldn't do that before. So I think that's really kind of exciting to see that maybe the decline of brand actually represents the rise of these channels in a better way.
Interesting, because it sounds like CTV kind of has the benefits of brand, but then the problem of measurement. So how do we kind of crack that, the fragmentation of CTV and good brand channel measurement for performance marketing specifically?
Yeah. And it's really where if CTV is becoming more performance driven, then it has to require real-time reporting on lower funnel conversions. And so with solutions like Branch's household measurement and us partnering with numerous demand-side platforms that offers TV placements and CTV placements, marketers can fully highlight the influence ad creators have across shared and personal devices within a household.
Okay, so how does CTV fit into the broader mix, especially of performance marketing? And how do you kind of ensure that you're getting that deduplicated view and source of truth so you're not overspending and not getting the insights? And yeah, I'm curious about all that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of why I like being able to work on a product like an MMP is that we don't want you to have to think about how it's different. Kind of the beauty of it is that they are deduplicated together against all of your channels. And um, for example, kind of like this complexity Justin was talking about with different households and different devices in different households, really that's just understanding the true impact of all of your users and all of the devices that those users are on. And an MMP like Branch will bring all of those together.
Yeah, love that. Love that for us. Okay, so you're mentioning getting all the insights from the devices, and that kind of triggers for me, your take on the data gaps on iOS, because that's no secret. With ATT and privacy changes, the data performance marketers used to get and rely on just isn't as easy to get. So the big question is, how do you get those insights in a way that's both accurate, but also privacy safe and compliant? Mark, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so iOS measurement has really been the perennial topic for marketers over the last, five-ish years. And it's really kind of shifted between privacy being at the forefront of concerns to other methodologies kind of taking the forefront and different options. And um, I think that we see with Apple's changes that they rebranded SK Ad Network into the ad attribution kit. But really, if you look at the details on what is included in that, it really resembles SK Ad Network's version 4 very closely. So you can kind of think of that as really more of a rebrand than a different product. But also, from where I'm sitting, I'm not hearing the customers that I'm talking about mentioning ad attribution kit or mentioning new versions of Scan. And also the adoption for Scan 4 remains very low amongst ad networks. And so I think that those numbers really speak for themselves in the market. Um, so yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but I guess I'm curious, should marketers care about scan in 2025? Or what's your take?
Yeah. I mean that is the question. And the thing I like to say where we are in the market now is uh, SKAd Network used to be an essential primary source, and we still recommend you configure it. And we have a great solution for it in Branch. But I say that it's shifted to a supporting source where it's really great to kind of see how does SKAd Network say my iOS performance is validated against my core attribution.
Yeah, and I think that has opened up opportunities for alternatives because Scan has simply not met the expectations and the requirements that performance teams need to continue to make effective marketing decisions. And I think the introduction from Meta and Google, Meta's aggregate event measurement or AEM, and Google's GBraid solutions have really been the leading indicator that modeled conversion and modeled reporting and modeled means of attribution is becoming that primary source of reference that performance teams utilize when making their media planning decisions. And these new types and these new means of attribution foster a similar technology, commonly referred to as aggregated identifiers, where they can cover complete attribution coverage within their own platforms without impacting what would be considered tying individual users across apps and websites. And while having AEM and GBait are great, it only affects your Meta campaigns and it only covers your Google campaigns. So that's really the core of the reason why Branch created predictive aggregate measurement, where we foster very similar technical logic as does AEM and GBraid. But we wanted to ensure that marketing teams had complete coverage for all of their paid channels, and it wasn't biased towards the data availability that was provided by Meta and Google. So with PAM, or predictive aggregate measurement, we really bring the coverage back to 100%. And really addressing those gaps that once was with iOS performance. And just to set some context as we relate or as we compare these new types of attribution reporting, like modeled attribution, against something more foundational, like scan. On average, we see a 118% lift in iOS installs against scan installs through attribution means like AEM, GBraid, as well as predictive aggregate measurement.
That's incredible. Like really, really kind of soaking that in and just how much of a difference it makes. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to hear too any alternatives outside of modeling being introduced in the market today that we should be aware of.
Yeah, great question. There are a handful, to be honest with you. I think everybody has slightly different interpretations. I think historically, ad tech has been primarily dependent on what would be classified as individual identifiers. Now, this could be the advertising ID, like the IDFA, but it could also be what's commonly referred to as click IDs, which are unique IDs that are applied to engagements. And along with that, there's also been a concept that's been floating around, referred to as UID2, which, to be honest with you, I'm not fully convinced that this is not just trying to replace the IDFA and transferring ownership of these individual identifiers that are shared across platforms and providers away from Apple and trying to make it more global or centralized. But to be honest with you, what I really hope to see is the broad expansion of aggregate identifiers by ad networks to use for optimization. I don't think that there is a need to purely rely on individual identifiers, and I do believe that you can reach retargeting and optimization goals through the use of aggregated identifiers, retaining privacy-preserving techniques.
That makes me think also of a hot topic that I've been hearing around the ecosystem, which is data clean rooms, or sometimes called DCRs. And, for folks that don't know, you can think of it as a kind of a shared place in the middle that no one has access to, but they each have their own rules to kind of put their data into it. The data can mix, and then they have their own rules on how they can get the data out of it once they've been mixed up. And, it's kind of seen as one of the potential future solutions for the fact that if we didn't have device IDs and we weren't using things like SKAdNetwork, what if we needed to do attribution or match on something that was considered first-party data, like maybe a customer's a user's name, even something like that? A DCR could be a solution for that. And, I just wonder at this point, whether there really could be market adoption for that.
Yeah. I'm curious too if they'll gain traction in the market and also who does it make sense for your data clean room to be through?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. There's multiple challenges with this type of a solution taking hold. Because there's different intermediary kind of groups that would be a good fit for being a DCR provider. You could think of it from a marketing oriented provider like an MMP, all the way to a big data lake or data provider like Amazon AWS. And because all of them handle big amounts of data, they're seen as kind of impartial. But there's just, when I think of just how many systems would need to change in order for all of them to work together and to use these new types of data, um, I think that we're not at a point now where we can confidently say that the industry is going in the direction of clean rooms, but I mean, we're definitely going to be kind of following that space.
Yeah, definitely following that closely. Awesome. Well, another thing that I'd love to cover today is measuring cost, because beyond complicated workflows associated with cost analysis that we hear about, we've seen that cost data and attribution data often live in separate systems, which introduces its own challenges. So, can you dig into why centralizing cost analysis is so important and how automation can really help make this process less painful?
Yeah, like I guess to kick it off, there's a concept that I've been talking about called the marketing maturity progression. It's kind of helpful in helping our customers kind of progress in the way that they measure their performance. So you can think of it as kind of four steps roughly, where you might start by just setting up attribution and just counting, maybe how many installs or purchases have been driven by an ad network. And then the next step would be, okay, just the number of purchases doesn't really help me translate that into business language. So maybe I want to look at the return on ad spend for those channels. And instead of just the count of those attributions, you need how much you spent on the channel and how much you earned from that channel. That would be that full ROAS. Um, and that's great, to get to that level two. Level three out of four would be more of a lifetime value type of tracking where it's not just enough to kind of get that user and maybe get them to do one purchase. You want to track them for a certain amount longer period after you've acquired them, and maybe track, for example, the CAC payback or the customer acquisition cost over time. And then the last topic or the last step on the progression is incrementality, which is all the previous presumes that attribution was 100% true. And incrementality kind of stress tests that assumption to say, maybe not all of what attribution said was correct. And I see that as a progression because you really don't want to skip steps. You want to master each of those as you go through the progression. And a lot of marketers are kind of still in that first step. They're still just looking at attribution. And I think it's so critical to progress through this progression. And so getting to that second step, which, it's two of four, you really need cost and revenue data. Your MMP is going to help you get all the revenue data, but it remains kind of a challenge to say all these different places where I have the metadata of my ad spend. How do I get that in one place? Um, and so that's really just a big blocker that I see for a lot of our customers.
And I assume one of the biggest blockers is how manual that process is. Justin, I know we've talked about that. Can you talk us through the ways that marketers handle getting their cost or spend data today that you've seen?
I would love to. I've seen many different shapes and forms of how this is accomplished. Some will use like dedicated aggregators like Funnel.io. Some use their MMPs for those who do offer complete cost ingestion. And I've even seen teams build out complex technical systems internally and in-house. And that requires a bunch of various connections with a bunch of various ad networks. Regardless of like how this is being built though, and how it's actually being facilitated, it tends to be an extremely manual and tedious process to maintain. And from experience, keeping that data up to date and flowing is really a full-time job, as that faucet needs to be running, if you will. And really, it's when that water stops flowing is when you could start to see gaps in coverage.
Yeah, I think what's also interesting about this is kind of the way these things are all interrelated, where media planning and the availability of data, it's kind of making me think of what we talked about earlier, which is, it's almost like the presence of these ad networks providing data makes you want to advertise more on them because you're getting more data from them, where it's confusing the true performance of things. I think about that with cost data too, where if you're stack ranking your channels and you just have the spend in your measurement platform for the top ad networks, that might be warping how willing you are to, for example, try that new ad network and you might be thinking maybe I just won't be able to get reliable measurement in a way that it'll stack up um, against the other channels that you prioritize.
Yeah, I think like when you think about it, if your MMP is supposed to be your source of truth for your performance reporting on conversion events, it only makes sense that your MMP also includes 100% coverage of your ad spend as well. So your MMP isn't just your source of truth for reporting on the accreditation of your conversion events. It's also your source of truth to report on key business metrics like ROAS, customer acquisition costs, LTV, and many more.
So how can an MMP cover 100% of media partners?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because part of why it's not an obvious thing that every provider offers is because there is a long tail. And if you as a savvy marketer want to find that next spot of really efficient growth, you know, that's maybe a reason why it hasn't been overly tapped by some of your competitors is because it is, there's just so much opportunity. And what you really want to look for is a provider that not only has integrated cost partners, but also offers the ability to bring programmatically or manually cost data from these other partners into the same platform and flexibly bring it all together. Like, for example, Branch has both kind of flexible uploading as well as scheduling email imports. And the combination of all of those features is what kind of really gets you to that full, reliable 100% cost coverage. And then hopefully allows you to not only get to that step two on the progression of, ROAS tracking, but then maybe immediately starts progressing to step three with LTV.
Yeah, we've invested a lot there recently, and I've been loving seeing what it's been able to unlock. So thanks for talking us through that. All right, so thank you both. We talked through some great stuff today. Really, to play it back, what I'm hearing from you is that what performance marketers should look for in an MMP is holistic, unbiased measurement across channels, including CTV, which is on the rise, and which is why you need a solution that can measure across household devices. You need to look for the ability to fill gaps in iOS performance, which is, something that we do with aggregate measurement with PAM. And then you need efficient and centralized cost coverage. So you need a provider that can handle it like we do with ROI Hub. So for anyone listening that wants to learn more about any of that, please feel free to scan the QR code here. It'll take you to learn a little bit more about how we approach performance and what these two have been cranking out over the last several months. So thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your day.